The following episode contains or may contain spoilers. So if you're spoiler sensitive, maybe beware.
Yeah, you sensitive people.
Get out.
Oh, get in. Welcome to the Phantom Zone. 3 fans, 1 podcast, and a sea of comics, or a sea of robins for this episode.
Yes. All the robins. It's my time to shine.
You gave that away. You gave that away quick.
Well, I mean, when they click on the episode, it's going to have the name. Like, they already know what it's about.
Like, welcome to Robins. It's weird Robins. Robin.
Yes, so if you don't know already from the many times we just said what this episode's about, we are talking about Batman's Robins today. It's because Kayla's birthday's coming up, and it just seems like it was something that needed to be done.
I wanted to let everyone know how much you guys loved me, because they were like, what episode did you want to do for your birthday? And they did deep dives of their favorite characters, and I was like, I don't know, should I do a deep dive of this character or Nightwing? And then they were like, okay, well, how about we do a Robins episode, and then you can deep dive the other character you were thinking about. And I'm like, oh my god, I can do both, really?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, because honestly, we were kind of like, we all wanted to do a Robin episode. Not as much as Kayla, clearly. But we all were like, yeah, it would be like kind of unfair that you didn't get your own.
And thus, here we are.
Yeah. So it's all about the Robins, from the main, 4 to some of the little obscure ones. But I mean, as always, we should probably talk about just the generality of the Robins. What makes them great, what makes them not great, and what makes them keep dying. Because they keep dying.
Well.
That's true.
That's true. Killing a Robin is kind of like a go-to strategy of a writer with nothing to lose.
It's happened so many times.
Some of them multiple times too.
Well, yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning, and you guys tell me what you think, because I was walking home today and I was like, I think this is one of the first characters that's like very quickly becomes more of a mantle than it is a particular character.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those sidekicks type characters. Well, sidekick, really. That's been around almost, if not this, like the same year that the hero himself was created. Yeah. So
that's true.
Yeah, the dynamic duo.
Robin through time definitely did become a mantle, and there's been so many. I feel like only maybe the Flash has so many like sub people having been that mantle before.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's actually a good point. There's not many. Actually, I don't think there's really any other comic book characters aside from Flash and Batman that really have like that many sidekicks and people, like legacy characters essentially.
Mm-hmm. But sort of to that point, like more than just the legacy issue, it's just the issue of like how many people have actually been the Flash, or at least like. And I think this is an interesting test, right? Because like if you say who's Iron Man, like who do you think I mean when I say
Riri Williams,
Tony Stark?
Exactly, yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Noah, because that's the point, which is that like you think of one person as Iron Man, and then you can think of other people in Iron Man's history that have also been that character, right? Mm-hmm. And I think Flash represents this kind of middle place where it's like, when you say the Flash, who do you mean? Well, you probably mean Barry. You probably mean Barry Allen.
I guess it depends on the generation.
Yeah, so you could equally mean Wally.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're, I guess, maybe 75 years old, maybe you mean Jay. I don't know, probably not. But here's the thing, and I think this is interesting. If you say Robin, you kind of don't mean anyone specifically. It almost indicates nothing, because there have been so many times where this role has been filled by somebody that really made it their own.
Yeah, you don't normally refer to the mantle in plurals too often. You're like, I love Supermans.
Yeah. Well, that's not the plural of men, but sure. That's
yeah, I mean, I think whenever I think of the Robins, Jason Todd is probably the one I always not forget was a Robin, but never really think about him as one. Because
No, that's. I mean,
what?
No, I would say we'll get into why, but yeah, absolutely, I agree with that.
Cool. Thanks, Jared.
I mean, we can do that deep dive now if you want. I'll go.
No, I wasn't getting into him. I was just saying that he's the one I don't think of as a Robin the most. Usually the first two that come to my mind are Dick Grayson and Damian Wayne. And
Of
sorry.
course, Damian, the demon, comes to your mind.
Yes.
Yeah, no shit. The one I think of the least, Green Lantern. I never think. Don't.
Good God. But yeah, I mean, you did.
Well,
Yeah.
I think let me hold on. No, you go and I'll cut you off.
Yeah.
So go ahead
Okay,
and
we'll
start.
do it for the 10th time.
Okay, so here's the thing. I was thinking.
God.
No, I was thinking. We're gonna edit this out anyway. But
Thanks.
Tim was my Robin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who was that your Robin? I know that you like Damian more now, Noah. But like, did you grow up with Tim?
Yeah, I grew up with Tim. Well,
Don't sound so disappointed.
no, I'm not.
I know.
No, I grew up, kind of Jason a little bit, but mostly Tim. And then Damian.
How'd you grow up with Jason?
By reading the comics.
I see.
I was
So
like,
in my
Noah, are you secretly 15 years old?
Yes.
I know. But yeah, I mean, I do find it interesting too because like, and we will get into it specifically, but they're not alike at all. They're not even. I mean, even the Green Lanterns, which I always bring up as like this great example of it's the personality, it's not the powers. Because with the Green Lanterns, they're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, there's some like Hal and Kyle can be written very similarly. I think the Robins are more distinct in personality than just about any group. I mean, you could put those four in a room, and they're more different in terms of personality than most super teams, like just the Avengers generally, or something.
Well,
like that.
yeah. I mean, I think with them, they have to be particularly careful with when they make a new Robin, or at least when they write them, because they're kind of like Batman in a way. Like Batman's written pretty much a specific way. So you can't have all of them in the same story and all of the Robins act the same way. You have to really know their personalities and characters to really the images that you see. Kayla sent one today and it's all the Robins playing, video games, and you can tell
love that picture.
you can tell all of their personalities just by how they're sitting or what they're doing within that picture. So I always think it's an interesting thing whenever you see all of them together. I mean, usually Jason Todd looks like he doesn't want to be there, but
he's there anyway, bonding family time. I think that's one of the main reasons I'm kind of, I wouldn't say obsessed, but obsessed with the Robins or just the Bat family in general, is that they all do really have distinct personalities. So seeing them go through basically just like facing a common foe, or trying to solve a common problem because they're all so different. It's fun to watch them try to work together.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they not only act differently, they have different approaches, different fighting styles. So yeah, I mean, I just love watching them interact because they do offer that wide variety of personalities.
Yeah, it's like you
and they go ahead.
This episode's going to be renamed to When We Interrupt Each Other.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to speak to the different fighting styles. I always thought it was funny that, Dick Grayson really emulates Batman quite a bit. I mean, he's definitely more jumpy and flippy than Batman is. But then you get like Tim Drake in there, and he's just has all these gadgets, and he's always hacking into things. And then Jason Todd comes in, or, I mean, when he was Robin, but now he's Red Hood, and he's just used guns all the time. And then Damian comes with a sword. It's like, what is going on? It's like a weird Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle action going on.
Yeah, it's ghastly how much they map onto the Ninja Turtles. I actually had to think about this a lot because one of them definitely doesn't at first, but so it's obvious. Okay, Nightwing is clearly Leo.
Yes.
Very clearly, Dick is Leo. Jason Todd is Raphael.
Yep.
It's pretty easy too, and not just they're both red and blue so far. We're doing good. Tim is Donnie, very clearly. Donatello, right? And they both have, and Damian is Michelangelo. I'll explain that one in a second. But I was going to say he totally is. Just wait for it. But I like that Tim also has the bow staff like Donnie, which is just funny. Just a weird coincidence. No, the reason. Okay, so Michelangelo is a party dude, right? So it's like very id-like, does what he feels. And Damian, his party is murder.
Oh my God.
So it weirdly works out.
Both of you, I swear to you, both need to read more Damian comics. I swear to God.
No, I'm way more into Damian than Cole. I actually
you made Noah cry.
No, the difference is I like that he's in the family.
Me too. I do.
You just don't like when people like
well, I don't like when people are like, that's my favorite Robin, because that's stupid. But I like reading him if he's with the other Robins, because again, it's the balance of personality. It's just like a melting pot of entertainment, you know?
Yeah.
I don't like reading Damian by himself. Or even just with Bruce, because Bruce doesn't know how to handle Damian.
I love it so much.
And then the other thing to say, there's a lot to say about the Robins generally, but one is that it's gotta be hard to be a Robin.
Why? Because you're impending death constantly.
Yeah, even to the point where it's like, I am the night and I blend into the shadows, and like, why am I in a leprechaun suit? What is? How does this help? Like, I am the night and you are annoying, so you will annoy.
You're going to wear a bright yellow cape because that blends in with the night.
Hey, Nick designed that outfit.
Yeah, you can tell.
Well, he's an acrobat. What are you going to do? He's from circus folk. Yeah.
But I like how they try to just like keep adapting that. It's like, we should probably give them pants at some point.
Oh, the Batman Lego movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
he
rips off the pants and he's like, ooh, roomy.
Yeah. And it was like from Batman, like, what was it, like Calypso Batman? Or is that Rasta Batman or something like that?
I love that movie so much.
Me too.
It really is great. I mean, I love that Robin exists, and I don't like to put a certain kind of like overly realistic sort of thing, but every once in a while you do. It's like if they fought a bad guy, I think even some of the more humane bad guys, like I think Two-Face would be like, this seems reckless that you were fighting a 12-year-old. Is this wrong to anybody else?
A 12-year-old that's in his underwear.
Yeah. I mean, I know he's got a sword, but I've got 2 guns. I'm just saying.
I mean, well, it's one of those things though, like knowing all of the Robins, even if Batman was like, you can't go out, like you're not prepared, they go out anyway. Especially Tim.
Yeah.
Tim was always doing that. Like he would always sneak out and he'd be like, how'd you get past his defenses? He's like, I hacked it. Like, what do you
Ironically, I think that Tim is probably the most obedient of them.
Exactly. Yeah, he is.
And he always does it.
Classic middle child.
Whenever I think of like older Batman and Robin, I think of I don't know why this is happening. So in Detective Comics, I think it's like number 38. Like Batman's holding up one of those like paper circles and Robin's jumping through it. It's like, why are you doing this? What? Where'd you get the paper circle from? Like, what? It's some weird, like, you know how like football players go through the big banner? That's what's happening with this. It's like the sensational character of Robin.
Nick wanted a proper introduction. It's like, this is how they do it in the circus.
Get the paper circle. Get the paper circle.
And by the way, I like that, we've kind of alluded and talked about this a lot, that they have this sibling relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great. And we've talked about this on the podcast, but like, I like it because they relate to one another in the stories. It's not just they each have a relationship to Batman. It's not just linear where he was Robin for a time and then he went away, and then another one came up, and then it's not just like 4 in a row. It's The other ones stick around the Bat world even after they like retire or go on to like other things.
Mm-hmm.
This is true. I know the like kind of the tension between the Robins too drives a lot of the different story arcs in Batman comics that I find probably the most interesting, like Battle for the Cowl and things like that. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Battle for the Cowl is a weird story. We don't have to get into detail too much, but like for the listener, it was when Batman was presumed dead, and there was this question about who was going to take up the mantle. And it's a great story because you do get to see how they each kind of envisioned what Batman was supposed to be.
Yeah, I think that's the best part.
I really like that story because it does highlight their relationship with Bruce too, like the way that they're coping with his supposed death, and just when all of them, I think at one point try to don the Bat mantle, and how they all act so differently from one another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like Jason Todd running around with guns. It's like, well, that's not Batman. Oh,
he literally, starts shooting bad guys, leaving notes. I am Batman.
Who's gonna say I'm not?
I love that they didn't know. They were like, "Oh no, who is this Batman imposter that's going around shooting people?" And then Tim is like, "Oh no, it's Jason."
Yeah, leave it to the smart one.
Everybody's
like, "Yeah, we know. We know."
I know the reader is like, "Oh, that's Jason." It just for the it took the smart one a while to catch up there.
Yep. Also I get a weird thing with the Robins. So they're such a popular character. I mean, they're synonymous with Batman, DC Comics and Robin and Batman, all of it. And you would think that there would be more, I don't know, like a monthly series or even mini-series. There's not. Like, I mean, they do.
Don't make me cry. I want that so badly.
Well, so they do, like, run teams, like usually Teen Titans or Titans or the Outsiders or, like we've said, they've become Batman for a while. But, like, so the first Robin miniseries was in 1992. And that was after Tim became Robin. And that one's actually really interesting because, it sets up like his training. It's like when he first started. And then the last one, so there was another one in, I think it was 1994. And then you skip all the way to 2009. And then that was it. It is like Battle for the Cowl. So there's only been about 4 miniseries that don't last long. And it's really weird that they can't seem to make them work. Like
I kind of like it this way, I'll be honest.
Well, so the Robin 2
kind of guest starring in each other's worlds and comics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they should be a team unto themselves, if that's a weird thing. I'm not saying like if they started, doing a book that I would be fundamentally against it, but it does stand to reason that they would have these kind of independent lives, and then they would have Batman as a kind of like anchor point that would relate them. But it's like in a family with, I mean, Noah, you come from a bunch of family, you know how many families that you have, Noah? Noah has a bunch of siblings. It's like you all have your own kind of like identities and lives and stuff like that, and I don't think, it's not like, well, so you don't all live together in a trailer, is what I'm saying.
No, God, that would be awful.
I just think a sitcom-esque Robin book that takes place at Wayne Manor would be gold.
Yeah, I think it would be amazing. I mean, sure. Yeah, but I mean, so the miniseries technically did well. There was 3 of them. There was Robin 2, Robin 3, and Robin 2. I think it's so funny. This is the premise for that one. It's called Joker's Wild. So it put Tim right up against Joker, the one that killed his predecessor. So
God.
Batman's out of town, because he's just out of town and left this brand new Robin to handle Gotham apparently by himself. So Tim and Alfred have to stop the Joker. He's going on this big crime and murder spree, and it's like, get the butler and Robin and go stop
Where's
him.
Nightwing?
Exactly. It's like, so Batman isn't answering his phone, and also Nightwing's MIA. Like, what is happening? And so, but
I mean, honestly, if it was any other custodian and child, I would probably, I'd bet on the Joker. But in this case,
I mean,
if you have Alfred on your team, though, I don't know.
That's true. I mean, especially in New 52. God, with the whole Court of the Owl storyline, whenever they stormed the Batcave, and Alfred
yeah.
took them all out. It was amazing. Loved it.
Yeah, that was another storyline. The Robins interacted a little bit in Robin Wars most recently too. But they're definitely, it's frustrating. You have to wait a long time before any significant like moments happen between the Robins generally.
Yeah.
Well, you just mean with all of them.
Yeah, I do.
because individually, like one to one, I mean, like they fight all the time. They guest star on each other's books all the time individually. Like, you know, so, you know, Tim, like, as a matter of fact, like they'll assume each other's roles all the time, which I'm sure is super annoying. Like, get out of my clothes. It's a very sibling kind of like, is that my Nightwing outfit? Is that my, yeah.
Typical sibling relationships.
Yeah.
Did you guys have anything else to say up top?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think definitely you guys are wrong about who the best one is. That's something I notice a lot.
Okay, yeah. So
when you do your deep dive on your fave, you can make your point, and we will disagree.
I feel like there's a weird, like, Kayla's like the ultimate, like, judge, jury, and executioner of, like, people's, like, likeness of Robins. It's like, present me with your case on why you like this one, and then I'll tell you if you're wrong.
Yeah.
I like the part where I'm all three, including the executioner.
If you're wrong.
I do have I got one more thing that we could talk about up top, by the way.
Okay, Jared.
Which I'm just, because there's stuff. How successful do you feel like they have been with making these characters independent from Batman? Because there's definitely some
Very successful
relative scale here. You feel like,
yeah, I mean, look at Titans and Teen Titans. I mean, I think without that, and without even Tim headlining both of those teams, or Dick and also Damian, I don't think they would have really been able to solidify their stake within the comic universe. So they're really good with Batman, and you get that, you know, one-to-one interaction with the Robin and Batman, but then to put them with other superpowered beings and with them leading their own team, you really get to see how they would, I guess, do things or interact with other things, or how they would handle a situation without Batman sticking his nose in it, even though he does do that sometimes.
I think it's hard to kind of judge how like untwined they are from Batman's story. Only because, like you had said, most of them, aside from obviously one glaringly obvious time, they normally don't fall out of continuity for very long. And when they come back, they're still fighting sometimes Batman's villains. Sometimes they're still working with their siblings. Sometimes Batman comes in. Sometimes they're talking. Yeah. So, and because, I mean, obviously Dick Grayson being the first Robin, I mean, and he hasn't really fallen out of continuity until recently, because Rick Grayson is not the same.
That's totally Dick Grayson. What are you talking
he's
about?
always like changing mantles and working with the family. So, I mean, it's just hard to quantify this. The Robins are so different because, like I said, they've kind of just always been there. And even when they're different characters, they're still interacting with the next Robin and the previous Robin. And, yeah, I don't know.
I always thought that was funny that they always tried to... So you brought up a good point with the Robins fighting Batman's villains. They always try to somehow, because Batman has such a huge rogues gallery of villains, to somehow like pick one of the Batman villains and like make it that Robin's villain. So like obviously like Jason Todd, Joker was like his big villain essentially. And then, you know, you have Clayface with Tim, and then you have, you know, Damian has Ra's al Ghul, even though it's still his grandfather, Talia, and all that. So I always think it's funny that they were like, we're going to spin a wheel and see which one is going to interact most with this Robin.
It's like, Signal, you get Calendar Man. Fuck.
Leave him alone.
No, he's great, honestly. You know, the funny thing, we won't talk about him too much, but like the only story I ever read with him, I really loved, which was that John Romita Jr. All-Star Superman. Or All-Star Superman, All-Star Batman.
We know what you meant.
I thought it was great. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. It feels like they have some difficulty. Pause. Are you guys
Hold
still
on.
there?
I think Kayla got disconnected.
We lost. Okay.
What? No, I still hear you.
Call her back.
I still hear you. Can you not hear me?
All right, I'll call you back.
Okay.
Hello?
Damn it.
Hello?
Hi. You got disconnected.
I was still hearing you talk when Jared was like, hey, is everyone still there? And then you're like, wait, Kayla got disconnected. I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm right here.
Because on
you guys
the
weren't answering me. So
well, that's the thing. Like, you could probably hear us, but we couldn't hear you. So
that's creepy.
I know, because it showed on my phone as trying to reconnect to Kayla. So weird. Is everybody here?
Yep,
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm here.
All right, so we should probably get into the spotlights.
Well, hold on. Can I pick it up from where I was just say this?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's like they've all been successful in terms of boring out a character. Like the characterization has been really good in terms of them being independent. But I do wonder if any of them have really outgrown like the shadow of the bat, so to speak. And maybe they shouldn't have to, you know. But like sort of you guys mentioned, like all of, if I think of like their major villains, those villains are all Batman villains.
With the exception of like if they were in Teen Titans. But even then, like if you have Deathstroke, it's like, well,
I'll say Deathstroke won't leave Nightwing alone.
yeah.
Yeah, but like you mean, like you mentioned, those end up being like Teen Titan villains in the same way that, you know, Batman has like Justice League villains by virtue of being in the Justice League, but they're really more like Justice League villains proper. Again, I don't even know if it's a real criticism. I don't think it is. I just think there's something about being, you know, if you're one of the Robins, like once a Robin, always a Robin.
Yes, that's a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah. But yeah, I think if nobody has anything else, we could probably get into who would we do first? Who
we should go
deserves to go
chronologically.
first?
Of course.
That makes sense. I'm gonna go.
I mean,
I was gonna suggest most helmeted, but
the most talented. So we're starting with Tim.
no, I said helmeted. Like who has the most?
Well, when he was a Robin, he doesn't have a helmet, so
True. Yeah, fine.
just saying. All right, starting with number 1.
Number 1 in all ways. We're starting with my favorite character, which I've already talked about him a lot in the first episode, but it's been a year since then, so I can talk about him again without repercussion.
Heck yeah.
So starting with full name, Richard John, in parentheses, of course, Dick Grayson. His first appearance was in 1940, Detective Comics number 38, so he's been there basically since the beginning.
Leave it to Kayla to know his middle name.
Yeah, you don't know. Wait, does Thor even have a middle name?
Yeah, it's Goat Sniffer.
Okay. Did you really expect a serious answer?
I did. I don't know what I'm thinking. He always disappoints
That sounds
me.
that sounds more serious in Old Norse, so you know.
But yeah, he was obviously from the youngest in a family of acrobats known as the Flying Graysons. And then his origin story in terms of what happened to him immediately after the mafia boss killed his family in the middle of a show kind of has been kind of updated a little bit. His parents always die by a villain or mafia boss named Tony Zuko. Bruce Wayne is obviously always at the show that his parents die. He takes them in as his ward. Recently, Dick Grayson was put into like a juvenile center home because social services had too many kids because it's Gotham. And Dick was like bullied and beaten up while he was in juvie, basically. And then he tried to escape to get justice for his parents. And he ran into Bruce. And Bruce was like, oh no, you're trying to get revenge, but you don't have the skills. So you should come with me and I will adopt you and teach you how to kick butt safely. And that's how he became Bruce Wayne's ward most recently. Everything was much sweeter back in the original.
By the way, I love the idea that it's like Bruce is going to help him get vengeance, and that's why when he went to the orphanage, he picked him. Like I'm sure he's looking around. It's like one of the kids is doing like triple backflips and stuff like that, and it's like which one of these kids is gonna jump off rooftops good? Oh, the one who needs vengeance. It's about the vengeance. Nah.
Well, Like I said, it was much sweeter back in the old days. He was just like, I want to help this poor kid because I see myself in him. Now it was just like, you're a perfect little vengeance machine. I could use you. He is obviously Robin for a very, very long time. They go through all of the hokey Avengers of the Golden Age and the Silver Age. And then he, like we were talking about in terms of sidekicks in general, one of the first to kind of want his independence from the main hero who he's attached to. So he becomes Nightwing in Tales of the Teen Titans number 44. As Robin, he was kind of already leading the Teen Titans, but he kind of liked that taste of independence. So Nightwing decided to break off after a big falling out with Batman. And then he's taken the mantle of Batman twice. Once when Bruce was thought to be dead in the miniseries 0 Hour. And then again after, of course, Final Crisis, when they thought he was dead and Battle for the Cowl happened. He's known for being the protector of Bloodhaven, who was basically Gotham's poorer neighboring city.
How can it be worse?
Yeah. It was just smaller.
It's called Bloodhaven.
No, literally called Bloodhaven. Yeah, that's true. And then Bloodhaven is destroyed by Deathstroke the Terminator, so that's blown up. And he relocates to New York. And then what brings him back from New York, obviously, is Batman's death in Final Crisis. Sorry, his history. I was trying to find the straightest line through this, guys. He's just been a lot of
extensive.
Yeah, and Bruce didn't really want him to succeed him as Batman. He kind of thought after Dick kind of shown on his own that he should become something else. But obviously he was like, my brothers are crazy. I got to be the new Batman. And he becomes Nightwing once again after Flashpoint happens. And then after Forever Evil, when his identity is revealed to the world, he becomes an agent of Spiral. And now, after Rebirth, he's Nightwing again, and then he was shot in the head in one of Batman's comics and becomes Rick Grayson, who is now being forced by his his grandfather to become Talon, and it's almost over. I thought I would end this part of my Grayson speech with, in January of 2020, it's Nightwing issue 68. He's supposed to start coming back to himself, so we don't have longer to wait, guys. It's almost over.
Thank God.
And then some noteworthy things of just Dick, his personality. He's been leader of the Justice League, Outsiders, Titans, and Teen Titans. So he's obviously has natural leadership ability, and he makes a conscious effort to making contact with all of the heroes he's ever been friends with. Like, I'm pretty sure he sends birthday and Christmas cards to every person on all of those teams' rosters, including his family. And I feel like he's the one out of all of the Robins that the majority of the other heroes respect outright. I think that was highlighted in Infinite Crisis when Batman is having a conversation where all the Justice League members are like, Nightwing could lead us one day. Including Wonder Woman and Superman are right there going like, no, Dick's a good guy. We love him. So not only is he loved by everyone in all of DC Universe, obviously aside from the villains, he's probably Bruce's favorite. You could make an argument for that not being the case, but they see each other, especially now, as equals. He probably has the best overall relationship with all of his other brothers, or all the other Robins. His relationship with Damian is, I would call it motherly instead of fatherly. But he basically raised Damian after stripping the mantle from Tim. And
so
they were
sad.
Batman and Robin, obviously, for a very long time. They're really close. I think Damian probably respects Grayson more than Bruce. I think Jason has a tolerant fondness for him. You might say something different, Jared, when you do your deep dive, but I think they're pretty good. They're pretty good terms. I think probably he has the most contentious relationship, which is really sad because him and Tim were probably the most brotherly for the longest. Because Tim was Robin for such a long time. But after Dick kind of stripped his mantle of Robin and gave it to Damian, who he already despised and who despised him. Their relationship kind of grew strained for a long time.
Yeah, Damian did try to kill Tim a couple of times.
Exactly.
I think.
So Tim wasn't cool with. He was also heavily grieving like Batman being gone, and he was like, well, "At least I have the Robin to cling to. I can do my job." And then Dick is like, "No, you're not Robin." So Tim was like, "Oh, okay,
Wait.
I have nothing."
I'm gonna need you to turn in your shorts, kid, and your batarangs and your grappling hook, and also the stun gun and the gas pellets.
I know
and
this
also,
is the only thing that's keeping you stable and mentally okay right now, Tim, but I'm taking it from you because Damian needs it more.
Yeah.
Relationship wise, he's notorious for writers just giving him random girlfriends. In Rebirth, within like 6 issues, he met a girl, slept with her, and then they had like a pregnancy scare, and he was like, "Am I ready to be a dad?" And I'm like, "What? This has been 6 issues. You just met this person. The writer is seriously doing this to you."
Yep.
The DC editorial staff's like, Dick, this month you will be dating.
And then Penguin next
spin
month.
a wheel and choose a random girl every 12 issues that they introduce. Obviously, I've mentioned it before many times. His long-standing relationship is with Babs and Starfire, even though Starfire... they were engaged at one point. I think that chapter is pretty much closed. With Babs, she technically still has the engagement ring he gave her.
That's so sad.
I think it was Infinite Crisis. So
Yep.
they've been on almost engaged mode for forever. And since then, he's had all of these girlfriends. So I don't know if that's still happening.
Are you? I know your team, Barbara. I'm Team Starfire.
But that's over. It's not going to happen.
I don't
anymore.
care. I want it to happen.
I want it to get weird, and I'm Team Catwoman.
Oh.
Ew.
She doesn't need to be with anybody. Let's just put that out there right now. Just saying.
She's a hussy.
No.
Oh my
Jeez.
gosh, that makes me really uncomfortable, especially after the panels I sent you guys. When he was like, "Why aren't I your best man, Bruce?"
Yeah. Oh, hey, let me go on record. Yeah, that's who it should have been.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I could rant about everything Dick Grayson for forever. And he hasn't been as nearly mistreated as Tim has been.
Nope.
Yeah, nope.
Wait, Tim who?
Tim?
Who's Tim? There's no Tim Robin. I don't know what you're talking about.
I just got the joke and I want to punch you through the face.
Not in the face.
I have super strength now. But yeah, I just feel, and again, I kind of circled the point a lot during the first episode when we talked about why these characters were our favorite. But he's just kind of like the all around, like, genuine white knight out of all of the dark knights surrounding him.
Yeah, he's the only one too that, like, after he was Robin, he's like, "I'm going to be a cop." Like, even like, it's so funny that, like, he went to be a cop and he was a special agent. Like, he's done the most, I think, even over Batman too. I mean, he's just been so many different things. I don't know if that's because they were just trying new things, or like he was the first Robin and they needed him to, like, you know, get out of the Robin and Batman shadow, which I think he's pretty much been the most successful. And I'd say Red Hood maybe too. But
yeah, I mean, because I feel like he is also one of the characters that can cross. You know, you were talking about, like, what was your Robin growing up? What was your Robin? I feel like in the world, in the DC universe, he could hang out with the Justice League as well as, like, the current Teen Titans. And I feel like all of them would be comfortable with him and know him and like, trust his leadership. Whereas I feel like some of the other Robins couldn't just, like, move that way through the generations of heroes and be as respected and, like, beloved. So.
Yeah, Superman himself respects him so much.
Exactly, and he loves.
He really
Superman
does.
is probably his favorite hero.
Yeah, which is so funny.
And I think it's worth mentioning too that as the first Robin, as the OG, he's the one that kind of established the dynamic between him and Batman.
Mm-hmm.
That's not why they're called the dynamic duo, but it does make sense in this context.
Mm-hmm.
Because of where Batman is brooding and quiet and dark, Dick is exuberant and flamboyant and in his own way kind of like loud and things like that, you know. Where Batman kind of, you know, wears us all on his shoulders in a very heavy way. You know, Nightwing legitimately seems to enjoy what he does.
Or, yeah, depending on what story he's in and who he's interacting with. Most of the time, he just feels like, I feel like the stories, especially during like Battle for the Cowl or when he was Batman, it was a lot of like, oh, I guess I have to do this now. Like,
yeah,
you can never get a break.
That's a good point.
No,
yeah. That's when Batman leaves, and I think it kind of changes everybody. All the Robins like have to.
Yeah, I mean that's why that story in particular. I'm probably going to mention this so many times. Is just so good because it's like all of their different ways of grieving. Like Tim is literally like, Dick, you need to be Batman now. Just put on the costume. You need to do this, and he's like, no, I don't want to take his place. And I just feel like they all had different ways of grieving. Aside from, well, obviously Jason went the more violent route.
Yeah, dressed as Batman. I'm going to kill everybody now.
As he do. And Dick was like, I don't want to replace my father figure. Like, this feels wrong. I don't want to just, you know, he's still dealing with him being gone. He didn't want to just step into his costume.
It's sweet in a weird way.
I know. All of the Robins are sweet in a weird way, except for maybe Damian.
You stop it.
Yeah.
He's so good.
All right. Well, I'm done with my Dick Grayson rant. If you want to add beloved comments, please do so.
All right. I'm sure Jared has way too much on Jason, so we should get into Jason.
No, I think I'll keep it slight. But yeah, so mine is my favorite Robin, and it's Jason Todd. And Jason Todd is the second Major Robin. Now, what's interesting is that the Jason Todd we know and love actually wasn't the original Jason Todd. The original Jason Todd just took place at Earth 2. And he was a carbon copy of Dick Grayson. I didn't know this. I just had to do my research, and he was just an acrobat. His parents died and everything like that. It wasn't actually until post-Crisis that he got a completely new origin, which is more or less the one that they stick with now, which is super cool, and I think why I like him. So rather than be the son of acrobats, which we'll admit is a rare thing for most people.
What are the chances?
Say, that's only one origin story. That only happens one time.
Yeah, everybody's like, Bruce, are you looking for acrobat orphans? Is that what's happening? Because it's coincidences go. This is a big one. Okay. But so anyway, Jason is raised in the slums of Gotham by a petty criminal dad and a drug addict mom. Two-Face's gang, his dad goes, goes against or gets on the wrong side of Two-Face's people and ends up missing one day, and his mom dies of an overdose. So Jason ends up with a really tragic beginning, but in a more like systemic crime kind of way, as opposed to a bizarre happening.
Also in a more realistic way, I think. Like, out of all of the origins, like it's probably the most sad to say, but most realistic. So
especially in Gotham.
Yeah.
Because it's known for darkness and grit and crime and stuff like that. Absolutely. So and grime and dirt and mud. There's mud there. And anyway. Beetlejuice, he's there. No, okay.
I like how you went with actual dirty things and not like, like crime lords and drugs.
Yeah. Oh, that stuff's there too. But anyway, if you want to buy a box of mud,
oh my god,
okay, sorry. Okay, anyway, so what's funny is that Jason lives the life of a criminal on the street, stealing car parts and selling them to survive and everything like that. And this is the unrealistic part, I suppose, is that he meets Batman because he tries to steal the wheels off the Batmobile, which you would think the savvy street smarts of a career criminal would be like, maybe that's not the score. Maybe
how he was able to,
like trying to
detach the hubcaps in the first place. That's shoddy building for Bruce.
No, exactly. He was a really good thief. I mean, it would be like trying to steal the handcuffs from a cop as he was putting them on you. But whatever. Cool. So Batman has just kind of had Dick Grayson retire and join the Teen Titans. So he's in need of a new Robin, and he sort of the sort of paraphrased quote is that he took Jason in because he thought that if he didn't turn him into Robin, he'd be turning him into the Gotham police. You know, he just sees it. So he was like, his idea was that he's going to use this kid who was going to be like a kind of not perfect like experiment necessarily, but like the prime candidate for the new Robin. And he's contrasted from Dick basically immediately. Dick is, you know, has tragedies befallen him in that his acrobat parents befell from a very high height. Sorry.
They were killed by the mafia, sir.
Yeah, they befelled. Anyway, okay. Anyway, so he doesn't have that acrobatic skill. He also doesn't have that exuberant attitude. He replaces it by just being a big dick. You know what I mean? Like he's just an asshole. He's very mean and tough, and he overly cruel to the criminals and stuff like that. And the truth is, he's not Robin for very long. Only for about 5 years, from 83 to 88. He was very willful. He didn't really listen. That's sort of forgotten when we see like the recap of like the Death in the Family story, is that it wasn't like the Joker just got him, and that he was turbulent kind of the entire time. And as a matter of fact, audiences kind of hated him. Readers kind of hated him. And as you all know, the Death in the Family story, where Jason meets what we thought was his terminal end. He was gone for about 30 years, but people sort of they did this contest. You guys, I'm sure you know, but if the listener doesn't, that you could call in a 1-900 number and vote on whether Jason Todd would be killed in this story or not.
Well, they're doing it again too.
Do you want to know? Yeah. Do you know how close this was? By
Very close.
It was the difference of 72 votes.
Well, I just want to speak for the public in the 80s and say, fuck you guys. What the hell's wrong with you?
So this hasn't been confirmed, but you actually might like this. Apparently, Denny O'Neil claims that it was faked. It was defrauded. That some guy with a computer, at the time, which in the 80s was very, very rare, faked 100 or 200 or 300 calls, and it would have beaten the margin of error. So it turns out the public probably didn't want him to die.
Yeah, but which way? But which way did he vote? Did he vote bad or good?
Bad, like against him. In other words, Danny O'Neill's point was that like he actually
probably should have lived.
He exactly to the degree this is true. But I mean, I don't know why he would lie about that. It's an incredible story. And anyway, in the story, which is actually a relatively convoluted story that involves the Joker and Ra's al Ghul, it really doesn't exclusively involve Jason Todd, but the big culmination of the Death in the Family is Batman tries to save Jason Todd from the Joker, who has captured him, and at the last minute doesn't make it in time, and after being brutally beaten with a crowbar, he dies in an explosion in a warehouse, killed by the Yeah, it's excessive. And actually, if you go back and read the story, it's really good. I recommend it. Because it shows Jason to be a hero. He tries to save his mom, who had just betrayed him to the Joker right before this. So there's this kind of like kid from the wrong side of the tracks who really did try to do what was right, but, you know, kind of kept either getting it wrong or was too aggressive or whatever. And, you know, Jason was dead for a long time, for like 30 years. And I am in luck that I get to talk about a second incarnation because, you know, he wasn't just
not a Robin
character that like evolved.
I'm just kidding. Kidding.
No, but this is who you have to know, because I was going to say there's two characters on either side of him who are they were Robin, and they kind of graduated gracefully out of Robin Hood. No pun intended. Anyway, sorry. But instead he comes back, and this is really dumb that this is part of the origin, but during Infinite Crisis, Superboy Prime punches the universe so hard that reality itself breaks into pieces. This is the dumbest thing I've ever had to summarize. But it brings Jason Todd back to life.
Thank
because
God.
a guy was so strong he punched air hard. and that's going to bring some people back from the dead. Unfortunately, Jason Todd was like walking around brain damaged, just aggressively fighting homeless people. This is true. This is all true. And got the notice of Talia Al Ghul. Now, because her father was involved in the original, he hired the Joker to steal a warhead in the original story that ended up getting Jason killed. Talia wanted to sort of redeem that, so she used the Lazarus Pit to cure Jason Todd. Of his brain damage.
White streak in his hair and a mind for rage.
Exactly. But Jason contends that his anger, which is going to come out later, it was not due to the brain damage, but because his deep betrayal. So Jason comes back in a big way as the persona of the Red Hood. It's a great story under the Red Hood, but the idea is that, and he's got a very striking like leather guy with guns and knives and a big red helmet.
That's how you're choosing to describe Jason Todd.
A leather guy.
Yeah. A fetish guy. God. No, sorry. I think I missed the word jacket. He wears a leather jacket. I guess that
Good
is
job.
a little different than a
you
leather
got there
guy.
Eventually.
Yeah, thank you. With your generous help.
Well, he didn't wear the leather jacket
at
first. He wore that after his identity was revealed and stuff. Just saying.
Anyway,
oh yeah, thanks. That definitely helped the flow of what I was talking about. Anyway, okay. I said he would become that. I didn't say he was that as soon as he like Talia was like, and here's your leather jacket. You're gonna need it. You're a badass now. Anyway,
every time people get resurrected, it's like, here's your commemorative leather jacket.
Yeah. Here's your Hummel with its certificate of authenticity. Anyway, okay. Yes. So yeah, exactly. So thank you. So he's known for his knives, his guns, basically using everything that Batman had, but taking it to a lethal place. And he kind of goes his sort of introductory story. He comes to Gotham, starts killing crime bosses and things like that, and challenging Batman. And he's enraged that Batman didn't kill the Joker in what do you call it? In Retribution. Yeah, so it makes him feel like his death meant nothing. He was just being used as a tool. They have it out, have a big conflict, which is a fantastic story. Unlike those stories, though, like the animated version, or if you just read the graphic novel, Jason survives and really just goes on to begrudgingly exist in Gotham, kind of like Batman doesn't like it, but he kind of allows it.
Yeah.
Jason doesn't kill so many people, and to this day, Jason's existed in this kind of weird black sheep place in the family. Where overall he's pretty much an anti-hero. And I think, there've been a lot of stories in back and forth. When Dick was Batman, actually, Jason ended up being one of his larger sort of almost super villains and way more Punisher. Like way more, intending to kill bad guys to show, to teach them a lesson and stuff like that. Where Jason's kind of at now, especially really since Damian came on the scene, is a little bit cooler, just a little bit more gruff. No, cooler in other words, not as.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait.
Yeah. No. No, he's kind of in most of his stories, and most recently he's known for being in The Outlaws, which is him and it's what's the name, Noah?
It's literally
evil.
Oh! I thought you meant
the Dark Trinity.
Yeah, I thought you meant the name of the book. I'm like, it's Red Hood and the Outlaws.
Red Hood and the Outlaws.
Yeah. It's like the Dark Trinity. It's the reverse. So yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's Jason Todd. He's the second son of Batman in a sense, and he's my favorite because he's got guns and he's been betrayed. That's
one of my favorite things about Jason is his relationship with Tim. When he came back, he was like, replacement, prepare to die. And he breaks in the Teen Titans tower and is literally like, I'm going to murder you, Tim. I feel like Tim is picked on a lot because the same thing happens when Damian shows up.
It was all a test, though. Like, I actually thought that was, like, Jason respects, I think, Tim, or at least has been cooler to Tim than, like, most of the, I think he gets along with Tim weirdly better than most.
I was going to say, because that's where it goes. I mean, even in Battle for the Cowl, though, he attempts to kind of murder Tim.
Well, you're gonna want to kill Tim. I mean, that's gonna happen.
It's so mean.
And then now they're probably, I mean, I would say the closest relationships are probably Dick and Damian, and then Jason and Tim, because sometimes they'll just have tea. Sometimes, when I started reading Red Hood and the Outlaws, it happens in like the first trade.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They're just having like lunch together, and they're like, "Oh yes, my favorite Robin, Tim Drake, the only one I can stand for longer than 2 seconds."
I think it's also because Jason, more than anything, feels like he got screwed over by the whole like bat situation, and I think that he does initially kind of, because originally he was like considering himself like a test for the new Robin. And to the degree he passed it, he kind of respected him and everything like that. And I think the idea was sort of like he didn't want to be the guy that screwed over Tim in the same way that he felt like he got screwed over. And I think that the fact that Tim did get screwed over is kind of
which time
them together.
but he constantly keeps getting screwed over.
When Dick was like, "You're not Robin anymore," and Jason's like, "I know how that feels, buddy. Let's have a beer."
Oh, I get it, man. Yeah. Oh, and last thing on Jason Todd, real quick, I was going to say is that what's ironic is that fans supposedly voted to kill him, right? I mean, that was the idea for a long time, whether there was cheating or not. But it was actually, he wasn't slated to come back. In Hush, in the famous story, there was a fake out, a red herring, where Clayface, it was Clayface revealing himself as Hush. When Hush is revealed, at first you think it's Jason Todd back from the dead. Turned out to be Clayface. But the funny thing was that fans were so enthusiastic about Jason returning in that way, and for that reason, like, in other words, to wreak vengeance against Batman, that it was the fans' positive response towards him that inspired them to write the Under the Red Hood story. So I just think that's really cool.
Was it in Hush that the fake Jason bombed Bloodhaven, or was that the actual Jason? I can't remember when that happens now.
Well, I think that they kind of retconned it, because originally when they wrote the Hush story, there was no intent to have Jason come back. Yeah. But then later on, in retrospect, they said that in fact was Jason, and he just replaced himself with Clayface. Oh my goodness. So that's how they kind of. So in a weird way, the story reflexively claimed that as when he came back, even though editorially speaking, that wasn't the intention.
That's super cool and behind the scenes comic-y stuff that we don't talk about enough.
Yeah, it's really cool. That's Jason Todd. Okay.
All right, Tim Drake.
Yes, my beloved Tim Drake, who I named my cat after, who is my second favorite Robin.
A great Robin.
Yes, I honestly think he's probably the definitive Robin, and probably, I think, the right successor to be Batman. I cannot say that word right now. And the strange thing about Tim Drake's origin story, it's kind of intrinsically tied to Dick Grayson's and even just Jason Todd, because of how freaking smart Tim Drake is. He attended the same performance that Dick Grayson's parents were killed at. He was there with his payments, who were very wealthy. His parents. Payments.
Money's on your mind.
His parents, who were quite wealthy. Tim was pretty excited to meet the Flying Grayson, so we took a picture with Dick Grayson and his family. I know, but he was just a baby. It's crazy. Soon after, they saw the murder of Dick's parents alongside Bruce Wayne. And then Tim managed to see Bruce consoling Dick, and then I guess he never forgot that image. So years later, he's 9. He's just taking pictures and kind of being a little stalkery for Batman. And he even had a video.
I get it.
He's a bored kid with rich parents who's left alone too much. He saw footage of Batman and Robin apprehending Penguin, and Dick accidentally did a quadruple somersault, and only Dick Grayson was able to do that. So he was like, Robin just did a quadruple somersault. I only know one person who could do that. And then after learning that Grayson was the ward of Bruce Wayne, he was like, oh, okay. So Dick Grayson is Robin and Bruce Wayne is Batman. I get it. And he just continued to like kind of follow them around and follow the adventures. And he was there when he noted Nightwing happening when Jason Todd succeeded him. And when Timothy really starts taking action is when Jason's killed. Batman just kind of becomes more like even more dramatic, if you can believe it. More psychotic.
More brooding.
Batman's behavior is kind of going out of control. And then Tim is like, I think Batman needs a Robin to maintain his sanity. So he when Nightwing left the Titans for a short time to kind of figure himself out, he was like, he's alone. It's perfect. I'm going to approach him. So Tim stalked him and was like, hey, you don't know me, but I know everything about you. And I think that Batman needs your help because he's obviously unhinged. And Dick is like, well, I'm not going to go back to being Robin because that's what Tim proposes at first. Is like, you should go back to being Robin because Bruce is going crazy. And Dick's like, no, I'll help him as Nightwing. So they both go back. Dick is talking to Bruce, trying to comfort him, and they're both kidnapped by Two-Face. And then, realizing that they're both in danger, Tim dons the Robin costume, and with the help of Alfred, they rescue them. And then, thus, Robin Tim was born. His training as Robin was a little bit tumultuous at the beginning, because Batman is kind of resisting wanting a new Robin after what happened to his last one. So he's trained by Alfred and Nightwing, and then Batman is like, fine, he has potential, and then starts training him too. And then when... Sorry, I lost my place.
You're okay.
Stupid notes. There was ironically, once he became Robin, his parents were still alive, so something's got to happen to them, obviously, for him to be a part of the actual Bat family.
Yeah, to be adopted.
Parents in the Bat family. So his mother and father, Janet and Jack Drake, drink water laced with poison. His mother is killed. His father is in a coma. That takes care of one parent.
Good God.
I know, all of these Robins are like, no, they have parents. They need to be orphans. It's part of the criteria.
The editor's like, hey, what's up with these parents right here? Like, there can't be parents with this Robin. That's not happening.
These parents need to go. But actually, in the beginning, his father's a main part of the storyline. Because once his father wakes up from a coma, he convinces his father to purchase the mansion next door to Bruce's mansion. So it won't be suspicious when he disappears to go over to the Wayne Manor. But his father notices and is like, why are you hanging out with this man in his 40s? It's kind of weird.
It's like, oh yeah, I guess I should just hang out in this creepy mansion. That'd be way better for me, right?
Eventually his father comes to support Tim. And you know, actually when Stephanie becomes Robin for that like 2 or 3 years, it's because his father's like, I don't feel comfortable with you being Robin anymore, and to respect his wishes, he's like, fine, it won't be Robin, and Stephanie becomes Robin. But then his father's like, okay, you need this in your life, I guess. And then he's almost immediately killed by Captain Boomerang in Identity Crisis.
Yeah, that's a really sad story.
Yeah, it's
actually,
really sad.
I know.
And he kills Captain Boomerang. He shoots him.
Yep. You know, yeah, the Robins sometimes kill people, and Batman is just like, that's okay, as long as I don't do it, it should be fine.
I didn't pull the trigger.
No, this was Tim's dad. So Tim, it's a super weird story because like I can't remember who sets this up, but they both get notes. Like Tim's dad gets a note with a gun, I think. It says like, defend yourself, while Digger was being sent over there to like rob the place.
Yeah,
so,
it was set up.
He comes to the door. Yeah, he comes to the door and Tim's dad shoots him, and then Digger like throws the boomerang like at the same time.
Oh, no.
So he gets killed with a boomerang. It's the saddest thing in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I think drinking acid is sadder.
He has no parents. He's officially a Robin. Yeah, and so Tim.
I threw a boomerang at my dad, and he's fine, I guess.
Good job.
Well, I think Captain Boomerangs are a little different than the typical one.
Yeah, I guess.
But yeah, he's been able to distinguish himself as separately from Jason. He's far more reserved in kind of his personality.
He's the tech guy.
And he's been able to, exactly. He's like the smart one. If you had to kind of nickname all the Robins, he's actually the detective. And then that's kind of how it separates him from Dick Grayson. Is he does a lot of the detective work, and it's not a flamboyant acrobat. And sorry, I keep losing my place. My notes are scattered. But yeah, and then so he does eventually, because he was trained by Dick, tries to incorporate a lot of acrobatic moves, but his style is actually like kind of closer to Batman's.
Yeah.
In terms of the gadgetry and the sneaking around. And then at the beginning when he was Tim, only because of what happened with Jason, he was under strict orders to not face any of the main villains like Joker or Two-Face by himself, that he had to withdraw and summon help. But like you had mentioned earlier, Tim Drake, even though he's technically the most obedient of the Robins, kind of ignores that and gets into all sorts of trouble. I feel like Tim's books are probably one of the most separate away from the Bat family. He went on to he formed the Young Justice team with, I think it was obviously Superboy, and I think it was one of the Kid Flashes. Maybe Impulse, actually.
Yeah, it was Impulse.
Yeah, it was Impulse.
Yeah, I remember that correctly. So he found Young Justice, led the Teen Titans for a long time. Sometimes he still is. I don't know. Poor Tim.
Yeah, he's in and out a lot.
I know. Obviously, we've talked about it already. He was stripped of the mantle of Robin and became Red Robin with various ugly costumes. Only like one of them is good.
Now he has a brown
shaving
costume.
His head. Tim has long hair. DC, just let it happen. And then, as far as the abuses go, I'm not even going to talk about how he was machine gunned to death recently. In the course of 2 years continuity-wise, he had lost his father, Superboy, spoiler, Kid Flash, Blue Beetle, who's his favorite hero, by the way. That's a random fun fact. And his stepmother, Dana. All within 2 years. So Tim's not having a fun time.
And also,
obviously, Superboy, Kid Flash, and spoiler, didn't stay dead, but he was still traumatized by all of that.
And he's usually the most forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. People don't normally, they always put him at the bottom of the list. And I'm like, Tim deserves your respect. He's the perfect Robin, I think.
Maybe
in
because
every regard.
It's just so sad.
And his origin story being like, oh, I was stalking you forever and I figured out your secret. Like, you didn't have to tell me. I figured it out. I just love Tim.
I mean, Tim is still weirdly my Robin, even though he's not my favorite of those. Like, he's my Robin in that, like, he's who was Robin when I started reading comics. And he was the most, like, sensible as a Robin. Like, Nightwing grew up, Jason was dead. And then, Tim is, like you mentioned, I mean, like, he was written so much like Batman without all the bad shit. Like, that's the great thing about Tim is that, like, he has all the advantages. He's not necessarily as, like, physically capable, but he's a great fighter in his own way. And he's every bit as smart, but he's not like weirdly obsessed. He has interpersonal skills. Like that's the thing that all the Robins have. Actually, oh, never mind. I guess the next Robin we talk about is going to have that in common with his dad, which is like kind of prickly.
Well, speaking of the next one, are you done? I'm sorry. Are you done, Kayla?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could talk about how his relationship with Dick is nice and brotherly, and his relationship with Damian is still pretty bad, but they actually care about each other.
Yeah.
I love any time that Damian and Tim are pretending not to like each other, and then the next panel, it's like Damian's like, oh no, is that Tim? Is he dead? And then he sees it's not Tim, and he's like, oh no, it's just an ugly person that looks like Tim. I wasn't concerned.
But
that's basically
Caleb mentioned, like, if you describe them with one word, and I like that's like, okay, so Dick is the good one, Jason's the mean one, Tim is the smart one, and then Damian is like, wait, is that What has he got in his hand? Is that a spleen? Does he have a spleen in his hand? Are you fucking serious? Are you? So anyway, that being said, Noah, which Robin did you?
Well, before I get to Damian, I did want to mention, because Kayla did touch on her a bit. So Stephanie Brown was a Robin. There was a lot of controversy whenever she was a Robin, and a lot of writers had decided to write it out, and there was a bunch of panels where the person that did it was just like, I don't consider her a Robin. It's like, well, she had the mantle, and also Tim stopped being Robin and she picked it up. And I also think it's funny that what she did, so during the story, she gets jealous of Tim because he thinks that some other girl is like getting cozy with him. And so she's just like, you know what? Fuck it. She breaks all ties with Tim, and then gets a homemade Robin costume and just goes to the Batcave and's like, I'm your Robin now. So it was,
I love Stephanie.
Yeah, I always thought it was so funny. And then ultimately, very controversially, she gets kidnapped by Black Mask, who tortures her for information on Batman. And she does escape, but she's injured too badly and she ends up dying. But then comes back.
Yeah.
Yep, as they do in comic book land.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure, we touch on her a little bit, because she's technically the Robin after Tim and then before Damian, which is my pick. And I feel like, just like Kayla, I have talked about him quite a bit. So what I decided to do was just mention a few kind of fun little stories or fun things that he's been through or been in, because I've already gone over his origin, but just to recap a bit, he was made in a lab with, Batman's DNA in an artificial womb with the League of Assassins. So Ra's al Ghul is technically his grandfather, and Talia al Ghul is the mother. Pretty much, you find out that Batman has a kid by Talia going to Gotham and being like, hey, here's your kid, bye. It's just like, and he's 10 years old. So he had been training with the League of Assassins this entire time. And with the League of Assassins, they're trained to be killers. So here comes this new dynamic that we've kind of seen before with Jason Todd after he had died. But now this Robin is a murderer. But Batman can't be like, I don't want you here. It's his son. So he has to be like, okay, I guess I have to train this murderous little 10-year-old to be good.
He's so mean to Tim, guys. He's so mean to him.
I think it's probably because Damian sees how sensible he is, and he's just like, I don't want to deal with you. It's like, go away.
And in that original story, because he was raised by the League of Assassins, he just kind of thinks that's how you treat like a person who is your competitor. Of course.
I mean, the one he sees as the biggest threat, he's gonna do that. Yeah, so Damian's violent, and he holds himself very highly. I mean, when you're trained in that environment, it's not really a big surprise that you're gonna have like this Batman level character to an extreme, but with like murdering swords and everything like that. So anyway, Talia comes in and out of the story, parental problems. Talia takes the worst. I hate Talia so much, but I also love her. Fast forward a bit after, Murray pretty much reads to Batman, you're the father. So Talia takes Damian to the Australian outback, where he is tutored in the secret history of his grandfather, Ra's al Ghul. Talia is unaware that the White Ghost, which is an embassy of Ra's al Ghul, is pretty much going to use Damian as the vessel to put Ra's al Ghul's soul in. And this is the most motherly that you will see Talia. She foils that plan and saves her son, even though most of the time she seems like she doesn't care about her son. So that's sweet. And then also to touch on, Kayla had mentioned Dick Grayson was Batman. And the funny thing with Damian is when he really starts becoming Robin, Bruce isn't Batman. It's Dick Grayson. So it's an interesting, like, oh, my father's dead. I have to listen to this person that I also don't really know and also become Robin. So it's a really interesting dynamic whenever he was introduced that way. I like their relationship a lot. I think it was necessary for him to at least bond with one Robin to make things okay.
It's really easy to overlook how hard that would have been for Batman, because it's like he was raised by the League of Assassins. If you don't understand, like, it would be like whoever is listening, it's like all of a sudden somebody comes to you and is like, you have a 10-year-old son and he's a Scientologist and you just have to deal with that shit. That's what it was like for Batman. Go ahead.
I mean, you're right. So then everybody knows Batman comes back, and then they're dealing with each other, both Bruce and Damian. I do know one of the things, because Batman doesn't know what to do with him half the time. He like lets him keep a bunch of animals, and also like buys him a dog named Titus. And there's like Bat Cow, and Damian finds Goliath, which in our Super Pets episode, I did talk about him. It's a really sad story. And then I did an interesting little factoid about him in Batman number 666. Funny enough, it has an adult Damian Wayne as Batman. He takes on the mantle of Batman after Batman's killed, and this is in the future. So,
I hope so.
Well, it's an adult Damian Wayne. And no surprise that this Batman is darker than his father and willing to injure and kill opponents if he deems it necessary.
Lovely.
He also has a cat, though, and he named it Alfred, so Alfred still exists, which is cool.
I love, by the way, that of all these people, including Batman, Damian's the only one that acts like he's rich.
He always has like 1,000 count Egyptian thread, robes on and stuff like that.
Oh my god!
But anyway, in this alternate timeline, him and Barbara Gordon she's Commissioner Gordon at this point. They hate each other because she blames him for killing somebody close to her, and it's also kind of alluded that Damian made a deal with the actual devil
Wouldn't surprise me. Devil spawn.
So for his soul in exchange for immortality and healing abilities. So
I guess Neuron, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe Neuron?
And then he ends up saving, young Terry McGinnis from Two-Face 2, which is the future Two-Face. And then fast forward a little bit to Damian's death. So in Batman Incorporated number 8, Damian is killed by his clone, the Heretic, which is an adult Damian Wayne. So the League of Assassins just pretty much have like an army of Damians. Just like aging at different times and ready to go out to kill people. So during the Leviathan invasion on Wayne Tower, shortly Damian dies. It's really sad too, because he has this really good heart-to-heart with Nightwing, and then like the invasion happens, and then the Heretic comes and stabs Damian through the chest. And this is, I don't know if any of you have seen the image, but Batman is on his knees and he's holding Damian, and he just has this big open like sword wound in his chest. He's dead, and Batman's holding him. That one and Jason Todd's image of when he died are probably the most sad that I've seen Batman, and seeing him grieve like that. It's I don't know. I think it hit harder only because it's a 10-year-old, and it's also his son.
They're all his children.
When his parents died, he seemed kind of sad.
Who?
Batman.
Oh, yeah, but he wasn't Batman then. So what?
I'm also completely offended that you're like, oh, but that is his real son, so he doesn't, he cares about him more.
No, I'm just saying, like, as far like a reader's point of view, it's like, oh man, like, I don't know, it's just whatever, fine. I guess I can't see that.
No, you can't. That's wrong.
But yeah, and then he ends up coming back. He's revived, and he has superpowers for a short period of time, like he's bulletproof and can fly, and then that goes away.
Jesus Christ. This is the stuff of nightmares.
Yeah. But Damian is a lot less murdery now, which both of you need to read. He has his own ongoing comic with John Kent, and I think it's the cutest fucking thing in the world, because
they're besties.
Yeah, it's Superman's son and Batman's son, and then they have their own villains, but like kid versions of them.
That's adorable.
So there's like Kid Amazo, and it's like this family of like creepy Amazo thing. It's really good. Y'all should read it. It actually was received really well.
I love that Noah's like, he doesn't murder people anymore. Like if you knew a 10-year-old that used to murder people and he's 14, it's like, he hasn't murdered anybody in like 3 years. This is a good kid.
He's on a streak. He's been sober for...
Hey, it's not...
There's like a sign that's like how many days since Damian's murdered somebody. They have to set it to 0.
It's not his fault he was raised in that environment.
It's also nothing to really shy away from, because the truth is Damian's, of all the Robins, again, I think Jason competes a little bit, but I mean, Damian's a badass.
I mean, he's 10.
Like, and full grown. Yeah, and full grown, Damian is by far probably going to be the scariest stuff.
Well, I mean, you read Batman number 666 and you'll find out how scary he is.
Okay, with that number, I don't think it was a coincidence. They're like, oh, if we need another way to confirm he's literally the devil,
yeah.
Go.
I mean, I like him because he's an interesting character because he emulates a little bit of all the other Robins, but then like he's a kid, he's pretty young compared to most of when the other Robins became Robin. So then you're finding and reading these stories that like he's trying to come into his own. Because he's essentially like this weird robot killing machine for 10 years, and then Batman wants him to be a kid. So when he starts the Teen Titans, the Teen Titans gets formed because on his like 13th birthday, Alfred's like, did you want to invite any friends? He's like, I don't have friends. And it's like, oh, so he like forces these superpowered kids to be his friends by attacking them. It's like... But then he has friends.
That's just how he knows.
Exactly. He's like, no, can't we be friends? And they're like, you tried to murder us. Like, no.
That's a legitimate reason not to be friends with someone, though.
But then they all become friends.
I feel like Damian would be like, I didn't try to murder anyone. If I had tried, I would have succeeded.
That sounds like something he would say.
He actually did. He did say that. So I just
yeah, of course.
So that is pretty much Damian. I mean, we talked about him in the Bat Family episode and in the Pets and Comics episode. And then one I have to mention because she was Robin and then like
no.
And,
no, the episode ends now. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for listening to my favorite episode we've ever done.
But in the Dark Knight Returns, Carrie Kelly,
which isn't canon, it's an alternate universe.
But that doesn't matter.
Yeah, it does.
Oh my god. Okay, fine. She was Robin for a little bit.
Carrie Kelly, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I just like her because she has no skill whatsoever, and she furthers the plot, but by getting in the way, like the entire time, and then happening to save Batman. I know it was a more realistic, like, oh, if a kid just wanted to be Robin, what would happen? It's like, oh, they would get in the way and probably mess the plans up. So.
Have you guys seen that movie Super with Rainn
Yes.
Wilson? That's what would happen. Robin would get shot in the face.
Oh, God.
All right, reading recommendations. So I'm going to recommend Batman R.I.P. And that's by Grant Morrison. Came out in November 2008. It's very early on with Damian being Robin and leading into that. A lot of good interactions with the Bat family in that one because Batman's dead. But so read that one. Go ahead, Kate.
All right. So I think I must have recommended this already, but we've talked about it so long throughout the episode with reason. I'm going to recommend Batman Battle for the Cowl. Obviously, when Batman is dead.
I like how we both recommended ones where Batman's dead. It's like...
I could have recommended Robin more again. I just feel like there's not enough to satisfy me in all of these Robin interactions, and this is a really good one. Damian is in there too. He's not Robin yet, I don't think.
No, he's not.
But there's only 3 issues. When I read that, it feels so much longer. The art's really good. It came out in May 2009, so read Battle for the Cowl, for God's sake.
Yeah, mine's the lead up to yours. This is like the second time we've done this. It's a lead up. All right, and last but certainly, probably not least, depending on which one you recommend.
No, I think anybody would like this. I'm recommending Red Hood and the Outlaws. This is the Rebirth, Volume 1. And it's Dark Trinity is the name of the story, and it's the formation of what's now joked about as the Dark Trinity. And it's Jason Todd's Red Hood, Artemis, the Wonder Woman ally, who's kind of a badass, and Bizarro. And they're this weirdly motley crew that fit together really well. And it's a real fun story. I mean, it's sort of like them having good intentions, but having really sort of hard edges and working their way through the DCU, and it's really good. It's by Scott.
Yeah, it's like he took the main Trinity's like most troubled kind of allies that are more or less can help them, but sometimes go out for their own, look out for themselves, except for Bizarro. He's just kind of sad.
Well, this just real quick, what's really smart about this series is that it's sort of like when you put these guys next to their heroic characters, they're like really dark and awful. But the thing is, in their story, they're the least bad thing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So they end up fighting really evil shit, and you're like, oh, these are the good guys. So it's really cool.
All right, well, that concludes this one.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at The Phantom Zone Pod for more podcast updates.